Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Daniel Davis's Deep Dive, where we give you the inside story of what's really going on, tell you the things that you need to know that the major media aren't telling you, or that they just don't have time in a little short clip. And we're going to get into another one today that I think you're going to find useful. And it's a question that really too few people even ask, and an issue that doesn't get raised very often because there's too many things going on at the upper levels and they don't get a chance to get down into here. But sometimes the things that are down here are the things that are the most important, that really have an impact on our country. And this is one of those times. So there was in Afghanistan, one of the enduring problems of the entire operation was always the corruption of the Afghan government, and the literally hundreds of billions of dollars that we spent over 2 decades in all different kinds of military support, economic support, government support, all this money that kept going in there. And we would periodically hear all these reports of pallet loads of cash being sent into the government and going who knows where and not being able to track it. And then the government set up an inspector general, the inspector general, the special inspector general for Afghanistan Reconstruction. They called it SIGAR. And John Sopko was his name. And for many years, he would annually give a report to Congress about what he had found and where the money was going. And there was routinely a lot of reports and studies of information about where the money was going that was not supposed to, where it disappeared, where the work wasn't being done according to standards, so that we knew where our money was going. Now, it didn't stop a lot of the corruption, but it did identify the problems, and there were some successes. And to his credit, John Sopko was able to actually get a lot of the people, especially on the inside, and unfortunately, both some Americans as well as Afghan people, identified who the culprits were. They actually got some of the money back, and they also stopped some of the money from going into places it wasn't supposed to. So it was a definite utility in it, and at least slowed down the corruption. In the situation that we have with Afghanistan, with Ukraine right now, there is no such inspector general. So you can say on the first, well, this was such an emergency issue. We didn't have time to set that kind of deal up. So we're just going to throw money out there and tell them we want to make sure it's done right, but we just don't have any guardrails to make sure that that's being done. But, we want to ask them to do that. Well, I mean, look, anybody who knows anything about the history of Ukraine since 1992 understands that there has been extraordinary levels of corruption, no matter who's been in charge. I mean, that's one of the things that led to the original revolution in 1992, I think it was, or 94, when Ukraine left the Soviet Union. And initially there was lots of corruption because of the Soviet officials before them had learned to be corrupt. And then, almost every 3 or 5 years, it seems like there's a new corruption scandal that had been going on. And it's just really undercutting their ability to prosper as a nation and all that. And that was also a big part of the 2014 Maidan affair, that there was alleged allegations of much corruption, both of the pro-Russian side and of the pro-Western side of the government inside Ukraine. So now then we have a situation where we have a long history of corruption, and now then you're just funneling in just billions upon billions of dollars, and there's no internal system designed to account for that. So now you've got the European Union, you've got countries in Asia, and of course you've got the United States leading the way of giving the extraordinary amounts of money. And right now, there's no pathway to even know where the money's going, to know if it's going to the right place or not. And there's lots of stories just in recent days to where the Minister of Defense for the Ukraine government was dismissed from his position. 6 more senior government officials were dismissed just within the last few days for corruption. So we can know for absolute certain that a lot of this money is not going where it's supposed to. There's a lot of corruption going on right now. So then explain to me why then our government, our administration, is resisting putting any kind of a similar kind of inspector general involved with this money here. Now, to underscore this point, there was a meeting yesterday in the U.S. Senate in a closed session of, I believe there was 50 some odd senators, and Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, who was in town for the UN General Assembly meeting and a meeting with the president of the United States. After that meeting, Senator Josh Hawley was interviewed, and he was asked about just exactly where is this money going and how much is being asked. And he had this interesting comment to say about the allocation of where the money was going.
He insisted that all of the money is going directly to soldiers and that there's no diversion of funds whatsoever, including any humanitarian assistance that's not being diverted or mismanaged. But of course, we don't know because there's no inspector general to track our money. I mean, that's the other thing. We spent $113 billion. The administration wants another $100 billion over the next year. That's from Austin yesterday. And yet they will not agree to an inspector general.
Now, why would that be? Why would it not be high on the list of the government to say, hey, we're funneling you billions upon billions of American dollars that could go to any number of other things? Josh Hawley personally doesn't like the funds going to Ukraine because he thinks they could be better spent securing our own southern border. Others say that, hey, the bigger threat to the United States security-wise is in Asia. Let's beef up our defenses there or whatever. And I'm not going to get into the pros and cons of all those things now, but it's legitimate questions to be asked because it is a zero-sum game. If you're sending money one place, that means you don't have it to send somewhere else, unless you're just going to continue to borrow. And that's another topic that we will get into on another time is our national debt. But for right now, the point being, why would you want to send large numbers of money in an environment where you just had graphic evidence that there's lots of corruption, lots of mismanagement, lots of malfeasance, lots of use of our funds, not the way they were intended, not to help them win the war, but to line some people's pockets? When you have at the highest levels of their government, this stuff's going on, why then would the American president and his administration resist imposing a requirement that we have an inspector general on the ground to find out where the money's going and to have the power to go into the way the money's being spent and to track it? That should seem a basic matter. It should be a requirement, which shouldn't be something we have to demand. It should be something that they require to be imposed on the recipient of this money in this environment. It should be a non-negotiable. And yet you see, at least according to Senator Hawley, even to this day, while the administration is saying, yes, we've given 113 billion so far, and we now have certainty that a lot of it's been mismanaged, we want to give them another 100 billion over the coming days and months and probably into the years. And we won't send an inspector general to try to make sure that American funds are being used for the purpose that they're being allocated. In my view, it is completely unacceptable. Now, as we talk on many of these episodes we've had so far in these deep dives, is that you see that there's no fundamental pathway for a military victory for Ukraine. It's just not going to happen. The components that are necessary, manpower, equipment, supplies, and an analysis of the enemy situation and what's faced over there, those things just can't equal a win for Ukraine. So on the substance of it, you have to say, is it really a good way for us to spend our money? Those are things that are important. But whatever the decision is made, if the money is going to be allocated, it should be a non-negotiable obligation on the part of our government to require the recipient to answer for and to demonstrate and to prove it's actually going to what they say it's going to, what we've agreed to give money towards. And yet, so far, that's not the case. And that's something that I think needs to change quickly. We need to talk to our government officials, and members of Congress, anybody that we can, all the way up to the president, to say, hey, if you're going to take our money, the Americans' money, and you're going to give it to another country here, the very least you can do is to make certain that it's being spent the way that we have agreed to give it to them, and not just to line some official's pocket. I don't think that that's asking too much. And that's your deep dive for today. Thank you.